Graders, welcome back to class. I'm so excited that we're working together again. I hope you all had a great Pesach. Today, I want to start off with us talking about Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer. This is a period every year when we're counting the days between Pesach and Shavuot. It already started. It starts on the second night of Pesach, but I want to go through what it's all about for you so that you'll know what we're doing as we continue to count these days. The first thing I want you to do is look at the words Sfirat HaOmer. Sfira comes with the shoresh samech fe resh, which not only means to tell, like misaper, but also has to do with counting. So Sfirat HaOmer is the counting of the Omer, and the word Omer means a sheaf of grain, a bundle of grain. And at this time of year, the type of grain we're talking about is barley. So let's look a little closer at all of that. Why is there a sheaf of grain that's got to do with any of this? Well, it's got to do with the fact that Jewish holidays have both historical meanings and agricultural meanings, or at least the three main pilgrimage holidays do. So Pesach, for instance, which we've just finished, is a historical holiday. It reminds us of something that happened in history, leaving Egypt. It also, though, has an agricultural connection in that is the time of the barley harvest. In biblical times, on the second day of Pesach, each person would bring from their farm an omer, a sheaf of barley, to the temple to give to the Kohen. It was waved around, there was a ceremony to it, and that was the beginning of their counting 49 days or 7 weeks from that time until the wheat harvest, which was at Shavuot time. So there is an agricultural meaning to both Pesach and Shavuot that has to do with what's being harvested at that time. So that's where the sheaf comes in. Now, let's look at what we've got here. There's also a historical meaning to Shavuot. We said that the historical meaning for Pesach had to do with Yetziat Mitzrayim, the actual leaving from Mitzrayim. On Shavuot, we're celebrating what happened 7 weeks later, that is the time at which Bnei Yisrael is at Mount Sinai and ready to receive the Torah, which happens on the 50th day. So 7 weeks of counting, the next day is the holiday Shavuot. So that's the historical meaning of Shavuot. So we are counting both in an agricultural sense and in a historical sense from one season to another, as well as from one event to the next. So let's look at the psukim here. I'm looking at Sefer Vayikra. You can see up in the corner Leviticus 23:15. And it says, Usfartem lachem mimacharat haShabbat miyom haviachem et omer hatnufa sheva shabbatot tmimot tehayena. So, you will count. God gives this commandment. You will count for yourselves mimacharat haShabbat, from the day after. The word Shabbat here is a little bit weird. It says the day after Shabbat. Miyom haviachem, from the day that you have brought, at Omer hatnufa, the Omer for waving, that stalk of grain, the sheaf of grain, Sheva Shabbatot Tmimot. It will be 7 complete weeks. Shabbatot means a full week. So we're being told that in the Torah, the mitzvah is to count Mimacharat HaShabbat. It seems that the rabbis had some disagreements and discussions about what this means. Does this mean the day after the Shabbat of Pesach? They actually came to the conclusion that the Shabbat here means the day of Pesach. So the day after the Yom Tov. So the second day of Pesach is when we start counting. And that would be the same day that the farmers brought their Omer, which was waved in the temple, and then they would keep counting for 7 complete weeks. So that's telling us the length of time for counting is 7 weeks. But look at how the very next verse changes it a little bit. Ad mimacharat Shabbat hashvi'it, until the day after the seventh week or seventh Shabbat, tisperu chamishim yom, you're going to be counting 50 days. V'hikravtem mincha chadasha l'Hashem, and then you're going to make a sacrifice to God. On that 50th day, that sacrifice you're going to make is specifically for Shavuot. But what's different here is that we're not only being told about the weeks, we're being told how many days. And that's going to be significant when we figure out how the counting is actually done. So we have 7 times 7. I want to point out to you, if you haven't learned this before, that there's symbolism to the number 7 in Jewish thought. 7 days equals a full week. It also represents the time of creation plus Shabbat, and because of that, it's considered to be symbolic of completeness. So if you have a week and that's complete, if you have a week of weeks, or 7 times 7, that's even more completion. That's full completion. So that symbolism is good to keep in mind. Now, why are we counting anyway? You see Elmo here, he's wondering, why are we counting? So let's look and see what we can learn about the counting in general. Why do we count things? What kinds of things do we usually count? We count our money. We count things we collect. Nowadays, we count how many steps we take. Those are all things we count because they're important to us. We also do countdowns in many ways. We count down the days to our birthday. I tell you, not just kids, but teachers count down to school breaks and vacations. We count down to things we're looking forward to as well. Although it's interesting, we count down how many days are left. In Sfirat HaOmer, we're counting up. Think about that. Do you think that makes any difference to what it means to count the Omer? I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Okay, so let's look back again at our agricultural meaning and our historical meanings and see if we can figure out a little bit more about why we're counting. So let's focus first on the agricultural meaning. We're counting down from the harvest of barley, which is at the time of Pesach, until the completion of the wheat harvest, which happens at Shavuot time. So we're really counting the period of time between which we have started harvesting our main grains and we're going to be finishing harvesting our main grains. The way those harvests happen, what happens to your produce and your fields during that time is really important. You have put a lot of time, effort, and a lot of your financial resources into planting up your fields in an agricultural time. At this point, you're hoping the rain is over. By Pesach time, the hope is rain has stopped falling in the land of Israel. If there's a lot of rain at this time, it can ruin your crops, which are now in a state where they're drying out to be ready to be harvested. So at this point, it's a time of some nervous anticipation. While people wait, they have the first part of their harvest in, and they're hoping they're going to get the rest in without an unusual amount of rain, without locusts coming down, without anything coming that's going to leave them without enough food for the next year. So they're counting until the point where they can take a deep breath and say, okay, we're set for the next year. We have what we need. Focus on the right side of the screen here, historical meaning. We're talking about counting the days from which Bnei Israel leaves Egypt until we are at Mount Sinai and we gain the 10 Commandments. God gives us the Torah at this point. So we're looking forward to something that's going to really complete, in many ways, our search for freedom. Because in the Jewish religion, just being free of slavery isn't really a way to live. If there are no guidelines as to how you're going to build a fair and just society, no rules, then this society can't really sustain itself and won't last. So there's a mood of anticipation, of looking forward to getting the Torah, because that is really what leaving Egypt was all about, so that we can build our own society. So there's a later historical meaning that becomes attached, but it's hundreds of years later. And that has to do with, maybe it's even 1,000 years later. I'm trying to figure it out. It's way later. And that is that during the second century, we had a famous rabbi named Rabbi Akiva, who had something like, I don't know, was it 24,000 students? He had a lot of students. And during the time of this particular year, when everyone is counting the Omer, a plague, a disease, hits Rabbi Akiva's students, and thousands of them die. So this becomes a time of year when we're in mourning for these young students of Rabbi Akiva's who died from a plague. The rabbis of the time saw this as a punishment from them not having treated each other with respect. That might not be the way you look at it, but what I want you to understand from this adds another layer of emotion onto what Sfirat HaOmer is, and that is a partial sense of mourning. In addition to the anticipation, in addition to the nervousness of whether the crops are going to come in, there's also some mourning. Now, I want you to also realize the plague for Rabbi Akiva's students ended on the 33rd day of counting the Omer. 33 is Lamed Gimel. So Lag BaOmer has become a day of celebration, and the mood of mourning is lifted once we get to the 33rd day, Lag BaOmer, which we'll talk about in much more detail later. So because we have all these emotions that are associated, and especially because of the emotions that we have from Rabbi Akiva's students dying, there are some traditions that are indicative of a partial sense of mourning that people follow during the time of Sfirat HaOmer up to Lag BaOmer. So one of them is no haircuts. I know a lot of you, I know I always go and get a haircut before Pesach because I know it's going to be a long time till I get one. This year, since the haircut, all of the salons were closed and everything, I skipped it. But I had to learn how to cut hair so I can cut my husband's hair. I gave him a haircut right here at home. Men traditionally don't shave during this time, although if one needs to for their work or for some other reason, one can. But you'll see a lot of men who are growing beards at that time and getting a little scruffy. There's also no weddings during this time. There is a tradition not to move to a new house at this time, not to listen to live music. I like listening to a cappella music this type of year. If it doesn't have instrumental music in it, if there are no instruments playing, some people find that acceptable to listen to. Some people say, so long as it's not being played live, it's okay, so a recording would be okay. And there's a tradition not to wear new clothes at that time unless for some reason you really need to. And these traditions of semi-mourning end when we get to Lag BaOmer. So it looks like I have the same slide again. I'm going to just go right by it and focus on how do we count Sphira. Now that we know all the whys and we know the moods and we know the restrictions, actually how do we do the counting? So the first thing it makes sense is that we start at the beginning of each day, which you might remember is at night in the Jewish calendar, because when creation took place, we heard first Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker. First there was night, and then there was morning. So the day starts at night, and traditionally this is done after somebody davens Ma'ariv, the evening service. At this time, there will be at least 3 stars in the sky. We call that Tzeit HaKochavim. The stars have come out. It's the beginning of a new day. The bracha here is like all the brachot that we say for doing a mitzvah. It starts with the Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, And this part I've underlined in red. That is always in a bracha. That's a bracha for doing a mitzvah. Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav vitzivanu. That's how you know it's a mitzvah. Al sfirat HaOmer, who has made us holy with his mitzvot and commanded us about counting the Omer. And then we do our counting. So let's look at exactly how that's done. After we say the bracha, we then have two ways in which we say how much time has gone by. We say not only how many days it's been, but once we get past the point that it's been a full week, we break that down to show how many weeks it is with how many leftover days as well. So if you're listening to this on Monday, then in your intro video, I went through with you counting the 11th day of the Omer. Hayom achadasar yom, today is 11 days, shehem, which is the same as Shavua echad, 1 week, va'arba'a yamim la'omer, 1 week and 4 days. So remember we saw earlier that in one verse it told us counting the week, that we should count weeks. In the next verse it told us we should count the days. So we count both at the same time. So if you are watching this video on Tuesday, then you heard me count for the next day. So how do you figure out how many days and how many weeks? Some of you are going to grasp this right away because math is your thing. But you take the number of days and divide it by 7. That'll tell you how many weeks there have been. And then whatever your remainder is, that's how many days. So look at 11 here. I've divided it by 7. Gives me 1, meaning 1 week of 7. And the remainder is 4, which leaves me with 4 days, which is why we counted 1 week and 4 days. So the next thing that's always an issue is how do we remember to count the Omer during this time period? I mean, it's a long period of time to remember it, and people have different ways of doing it, and some people have found this to be a time to make a light-hearted reminder, or even there are some beautiful pieces of art that help us remember, and we call these Omer counters. In this picture, there's one here where you can see someone has made 7 rows of Legos and 7 columns of Legos. And since we're working our way up to Shavuot, when we receive the 10 Commandments, you can see on the top there, they've put the 10 Commandments, and they are opening each little door each day as a reminder to themselves where they are. It looks like on the bottom that they have some little things that they're pulling out each day, and that's helping them remember where they are in Sfirat HaOmer. There are simpler things. You can see here that here's a poster where you can check it off or put a sticker on each day as you count. You will notice that they've made a point of every 7 days changing what color it is so you can easily see how many weeks have gone by and be aware of that. And they've included the bracha there at the top so that they'll remember. On the right is a beautiful piece of art that somebody has made in silver that says Sfirat HaOmer and has inside what you would say for each day to count the Omer. And you can see they've decorated it with some little images of grains. So that's quite beautiful. Nowadays, there's another way people do this. And at my house, this is what we use. You can download an app for your phone that will be a reminder, play either a tune or some sort of an alarm for you, reminding you that it's the time of day when it's time to count Omer for that day. So no matter what we're doing in the evening, I hear a little beep, 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 beep. Some years we've had an app that plays a little tune that reminds us it's time to count the Omer. When we look at the app, it tells us exactly what day it is, and we know where to go on from there. So the next question I ask is, what if you forget? And there are different traditions about this. Here Here's one tradition. If you don't remember in that evening to count it, go ahead and count it the same day, but don't say the bracha when you count, and then you can go back to your regular counting at the next time. Another tradition says if you've missed it and you didn't get to it that day, even after the whole day went by, you can keep counting, but you don't say the bracha at all anymore. So there are different ways people do it, and some people just go ahead and go right back to the bracha. Now, here's a little piece of insider knowledge that not everyone is aware of. I always have made a point when I'm with my class of asking my students what day of the Omer it is in a certain way. I always say, what did we count yesterday? I never say to them, what day of the Omer, of the counting is it today? I always ask them what it was the day before. And this is traditional. You'll hear Jews all around the world do this. And it's because the thought is as soon as I say what day it is, I have actually done the counting. But I've done it without the bracha with it. So I might say to you all, what day of the Omer did we count yesterday? And you might all say to me, oh, that was the 10th day of Sfirat HaOmer, the 10th day of counting. And then we would all know that this is the day we're going to count the 11th, and we would do that. But we wouldn't say it's the 11th until we've counted the 11th, because otherwise we've said it without the bracha. And the bracha is part of what makes it special and holy. So this was a long lesson with tons of information about Sfirat HaOmer. I hope you found something new that you've learned here, maybe a few things, and we will pick up on this tomorrow. All right, guys, take a look at your distance learning document and you'll see what comes next.